Hey voters, Anthony Haslage, the internet politician here. Before I begin, do not forget to like and subscribe to keep up to date on new content. And we are returning to topics from my political positions document, which can be found on my website. The website's link is in the description. And we begin with territories. Now, before I even read this, I'm going to preface with Washington, D.C., or potentially the future state of Columbia. They voted again for statehood. The concern is that they would be a primarily Democratic state. Which is funny. They probably would be, and perpetually so. But their population is much larger than a few of the states, Rhode Island in particular. So they probably deserve to be a state. Then there's Puerto Rico, which is rather independent politically speaking, because they do switch between Democrats and Republicans. They also voted for statehood recently. Frankly, I think both should get statehood. I also keep in mind that the Northern Californians, which are typically a Republican group, if Northern California wants to become a state with a portion of Southern Oregon, I guess, if they want to become a Republican state, have at it. I personally like. The issue, I guess, is with considerations for electoral votes. Like, if we just get rid of the Electoral College, I think that would solve a lot of our problems if we just purely went on population numbers. But that's just me. And I'll probably get to it later in the voting section. But two territories. The United States has a number of territories that it has won through war, peacetime, purchases, and treaties. These territories receive many of the perks of being part of the nation, but do not pay their fair share in taxes. They also don't get the representation they should. It is time to find a way to incorporate these territories into the nation. In exchange, they get full statehood rights, representation, and the nation gets paid for its efforts. As I mentioned, I'm not sure if Washington, D.C. would be called New Columbia or Columbia. Honestly, I don't care. I don't live there. So whatever they call it is whatever they call it. People argue with me, well, but the capital can't be part of a state. The capital wouldn't be part of the state. The capital already has its own police force, among other things. It would still be the District of Columbia. So it would be a wholly separate entity. But I think our hesitance to making D.C. a state, it boils back down to what I mentioned before. Electoral college concerns. I think that's moot. I think we switch to a popular vote, but talk about it later. So my second topic here is terrorism, and I have two views on terrorism. None of them are pro-terrorism, mind you. The first view is about entities separate from any recognized world government. Those that are not associated with any recognized world government rarely allow for diplomatic bargaining. That's why you hear that we don't negotiate with terrorists. Well, terrorists don't negotiate with us. And in some cases, they just want us and our allies dead. I don't need to cite what groups. You already know. Sometimes a nation needs to take negative actions against terrorists. It's plain and simple. If they're bombing you, you got to bomb them back, and you got to bomb them bigger. The use of diplomatic and/or economics means to convince the host nation to take action on behalf might be necessary. But if that's not a viable option, get permission from the host nation to go in and eliminate the threat. I have a problem with unilateral bombing without permission thing. Like, how would you feel if the Indians or the Pakistanis bombed Oklahoma because of the Native Americans there being called Indians, which is not PC, mind you? But that would be a stupid, petty argument, and still they would just bomb Oklahoma. And you wouldn't like it if it happened to you, you know? And I feel like I'm going to get comments about why Oklahoma. But if you know the history of Oklahoma, half the state was, actually, I think the entire state, as a matter of fact, was set aside for native tribes. But I think only half the state actually is at this point. Anyway, I digress. If that option is not viable, get backing from world governments and strike. If that option is not viable, strike without any backing of any world government. As I've written this document in 2013 or 2012, my opinion may have changed slightly on that. I'm of two minds, again, as I said. If they attack us and it's unsolicited, I feel like retribution is deserved. but then you also don't want to stomp on the sovereignty of another country, which is why I'm happy I'm not president, because to make that decision, which the most recent previous president had to once, I don't know if I could sleep at night. So the second view is about recognized world governments try to be preemptive in preventing terrorism in the first place with other world governments. If diplomatic and economic means fail and an act of terrorism is the result, get backing from the world governments and invade. If that option is not viable, invade without the backing of the world governments. And I feel like I repeat the same points, but it says ultimately end result would be having a new government leadership in order to take over once the old government is removed. Once that is done, leave the nation and let them run their government how they want. We should not be forcing democracy on countries who do not want it. I would like to cite Iraq and Afghanistan. We had a problem with terrorists. We went in, we mowed everything down, and then we tried to force them into democracy. And that is not really how countries, or most countries in the Middle East, operate. So, I mean, if we have no choice but to go in, once we put educated, knowledgeable, well-meaning people into power, we shouldn't be hanging around to make sure they do it. If they ruin the country again, and then maybe the international government and the international coalition might have to say something, but my approach is that as long as they leave us alone, we should leave them alone. Because again, you don't want them coming here and doing the same thing to us. Oh, your Republicans or your Democrats are an upheaval. I don't know what the word is, but they're going to attack us because they think it's unstable. That's dumb. We shouldn't do it to other people. So we move on to Veterans Affairs. Speaking of military stuff, they fight hard to protect our country, and they should be rewarded for doing so. If this means supporting them because they came home with a disability or helping them find employment, it should be done. Here where I live, there is actually an organization that helps veterans find work. They will first look at government positions because veterans get, which I agree with. It seems unfair generally, but I feel like veterans put their lives on the line to protect us. So maybe we make the exception for them to get a good government job. Well, that is all the time we have for today, voters. Remember, a good voter is an informed voter who can think for themselves. Do not forget to check out my previous videos on this channel, as well as like and subscribe to keep up to date on new content.